Alright, so Godzilla, King of the Monsters. Yes, Godzilla returns once again from the 2014 version. From Gareth Edwards. Now, for a lot of people, I really liked Gareth Edwards' 2014 Godzilla. I know a lot of people were a little bit, might have been a little bit on the fence with it, mostly because Edwards directed that film similar to his other sci-fi film, Monsters, where he kind of kept the monsters at a distance in the background. He used them sparingly, so only got a little bit of Godzilla here and there before we got to the big fight at the end. Well, if you really didn't like that style, if you didn't like that, well, then you don't have to worry about this new Godzilla, King of the Monsters, directed by Michael Dougherty. This one gives you the fights. It gives you lots of giant monster fights. You got plenty of them. You got Godzilla, you got Ghidorah, you got Mothra, you got Rodan, you got even more giant monsters, and they're all beating the crap out of each other throughout the film in huge, big ass battles with lots of destruction and lots of fighting and lots of violence erupting across the screen, and then cities demolished and giant explosions and fire. And it's okay. It's kind of sad to admit, because I dug Gareth Edwards' style because it felt a little bit different. I hadn't quite seen that in a Godzilla film. And King of the Monsters feels like it's kind of going more back to basics with a traditional giant monster movie. In other words, it's more about the giant monster fights, and with the humans, you mostly kind of leave their human story off to the side and kind of make it a little simple, melodramatic, and similar to what we've seen with tropes in other disaster films. Now, the premise is at least kind of interesting. Okay, it's similar to other more classic Godzilla films. There's even lots of little odes to certain aspects of how these giant monster movies are assembled. Stuff kind of comes out of left field, and how there's little weird science to everything going on here. So I kind of like the premise here. It takes place, like I said, 5 years after the 2014 Godzilla, in which the Monarch Company, who is trying to track these the giant monsters, which they call Titans, which were apparently the original rulers of the planet. They're trying to, now that they're out in the open, Monarch, the corporation, is just trying to say, look, we got to live in harmony with these guys, otherwise they're just going to tear us to shreds. Now, while they're trying to make their case, they're also trying to find more of these giant monsters and keep them contained and under wraps. But on the other side of the spectrum, there are a bunch of eco-terrorists who say that, yes, let the giant monsters out. Let them wipe out humanity, because then it'll be kind of a fresh, clean start. So, the typical bad guy banter of how, there are too many humans in the world. We gotta clean the slate and just start over from there. So that's what's ended up happening. Now, the human stories are kind of atypical of this type of genre, and really not that interesting. You have Kyle Chandler playing Dr. Mark Russell, who used to work for Monarch, but now he's called back in because they have another giant monster problem, and now his family is on the line. Specifically, his ex-wife, played by Vera Farmiga, and his daughter, played by Millie Bobby Brown. They're both held hostage by eco-terrorists, and now they've got to play ball and try to catch up with them, and also try to stop the giant monster threat. Now, there are more giant monsters on the horizon. They realize, since Godzilla was a bit of an ally in the first film, we got to rely on Godzilla. So they try to work alongside Godzilla this time. Except, it still kind of feels like the humans are mostly off to the side here. It really feels like their story just kind of like lags and just goes into, typical melodrama. Every human character kind of feels like they're fulfilling their exact role in this giant monster film and nothing more. And don't really get into much more than that. You got Kyle. I gotta admit though, I really do like Kyle Chandler as kind of this old fashioned grizzled ex-soldier. He kind of has that look of kind of like a action man of the 1950s. I kind of dig it. But he's kind of only in there, just to grit his teeth and scream and just to make the tough calls. And he makes all the big discoveries. Vera Farmiga does bring some nice emotion to her role, where she's trying to figure out, she's a scientist as well, so she's trying to figure out the right way to go about this whole ordeal with giant monsters. Millie Bobby Brown is all right as kind of a smaller scream queen, where she's meant to run from giant monsters and do a lot of screaming and reacting and shouting back at the monsters. So she's more kind of like our emotional outlet for this film, more or less. Bradley Whitford shows up as another doctor. He mostly just makes, the sassy comments. You have Sally Hawkins, fresh off of The Shape of Water, once again, being a woman who's really into monsters. Yeah, and she's kind of like that, kind of like that telepath who just like, it feels like a wave of her arm. She says like, "Oh, Godzilla's dying." She fulfills that role and little more else than that. You do have some returning characters here, not a lot, but you do have a few. You have Ken Watanabe back once again, as as kind of the expert doctor on Godzilla. It's like, yes, Godzilla and I, we have history. We go way back. Him and me, yeah. And then you have oh, who is the other? You have one of the scientists from Kong Skull Island does return here. Let's see if I can find him. Yeah, right here. Oh no! Wait, that I forgot another character to mention. David Strathairn from the military. Who is he? The Admiral. Yes, the military admiral from the last film. He does come back here. He actually comes. He actually just kind of like randomly pops in there. It's kind of like he's like the biggest like shocker. They're like, oh, he's back as well. Oh, okay. So yeah, you do have a few returning characters, not a whole lot. Of course, you have Godzilla coming back, and you have more giant monsters. But we mostly get to see, like I said, like everything kind of feels like it's in its place here for a giant monster movie, fulfilling the typical tropes here. Characters fulfill. Just a few small roles of what they're meant to be for this plot, and they don't really break out of it. They like, if you're hoping that there's going to be some new change in the giant monster genre, not much of that here. If you're looking for just like an atypical Godzilla film where it's more about just the monsters beating the crap out of each other, and then the human story is just kind of like, yeah, it's okay, but it's mostly just the typical cliches and tropes and stuff like that. Then you should be fine. If that's really all you want. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, why are you complaining about the human story? Everyone cares about the giant monsters. Well, it's like, well, if you don't really care about the human story, then that begs the question, why is there a human story? And why are we spending so much time with it? Because I was really starting to get pretty bored with this human story. It's like, okay, I understand you're trying to be earnest with the giant monster genre, but you don't have to be that earnest. I mean, this is a big blockbuster. You can take some chances. You can try some stuff here. But that I think that's the problem, though, is that it does feel like it's going back to basics with that stuff. Now, of course, okay, yes, I know everyone wants to know, okay, are the giant monster battles cool? Yes, they are cool. You get to see Rodan do some cool stuff, or he gets to attack like a whole fleet of like jets and stuff like that. You do get to see King Ghidorah get all three heads attacking Godzilla and shooting lightning. You do get more of Godzilla shooting the atomic breath. You do get Mothra shooting out webs at people and stabbing people with her little pincers and showing those big luscious wings that just come out of nowhere. Yeah, you do get enough of that. Obviously, you get more than you did in the Gareth Edwards film, because they're definitely not going for subtlety here. They show Godzilla pretty early, and they show King Ghidorah early, because they know these are the stars of the film. This is what you came to see. You didn't come to see Sally Hawkins just kind of wave her hand and try to like sense Godzilla's heartbeat. They knew what you were coming for with this film, and that's what I kind of love about the film, but also what I kind of feel was a letdown, because a lot of people say, yeah, again, going back to the whole idea that, okay, the human story is boring. But to be honest, though, I went back and rewatched Shin Godzilla, which came out about 3 years ago, over in Japan. Yes, while we were making our own Godzilla, Toho was hard at work on another Godzilla going on in Japan. And I actually found myself more intrigued by Shin Godzilla, because the human story was more interesting, because it had these themes of, how bureaucracy can be kind of like stuffy and trying to handle a threat like Godzilla. Now, of course, yeah, Godzilla still looks cool. He's got these new mutations. He's got a new design. You get like that, kind of like the classic giant monster action we've used that we've used to see with these Toho Godzilla films. But I found it more interesting, because I was more intrigued by the human story than I was with Godzilla himself, which is rare for these Godzilla films. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about Godzilla, King of the Monsters, and yeah, it's all right. It fulfills the expectations of a Godzilla blockbuster film. It's melodramatic. It's corny. It's got some big action. It's got lots of great effects. It's got a lot of great effects, actually. but I mean, for as cool as like the trailer looked, there were a lot of shots in there that just kind of felt either too dark or a little bit too shaky cam, where it felt like, it was kind of like drowning out a lot of the giant monster action. It felt like they were kind of like pushing them a little bit further into the background. It's like, you don't, I thought we weren't going to be like the Gareth Edwards version. I thought the giant monsters were going to be out in the open here. So why are they right in front of us and we can barely see them most of the time? And I understand because they want to go for that shadowy effect. They want to have, Ghidorah with the lightning in the background to make it look like the storms around him. I get the fact that they want to have, see the Godzilla lighting up his mouth in the background. That stuff kind of looks cool. I just wish that, like some of the fights were a little bit more clear. There are some cool moves here and there. Obviously, the climax is the highlight of the film, where Godzilla and Ghidorah face each other down in a grand showdown. So yeah, it's not a bad Godzilla film. It fulfills, all the expected little check marks. If you're really that type of Godzilla fan who goes into these giant monster films and says, okay, the film has to do this, this, and this, you can go in there and you can gleefully make each check mark as you go down there. I was just kind of hoping for a little bit more. And again, when I say hoping for a little bit more, obviously people are going to be saying like, oh, what did you expect, Martin Scorsese? No. But I expect maybe the characters can jump a little bit out of their tropes here. I mean, it's not that they're bad in their tropes, but you wish there was a little bit something here to, like, shake off the familiar. I mean, that being said, I did kind of like Charles Dance playing Colonel Alan Jonah as sort of like the eco-terrorist mastermind, who gets in the best lines and says, we're doing this for humanity. He's kind of fun, but I feel like I need more of this guy. He's a great villain, but I think we need a whole lot more of him. So I enjoyed the film once it finally got its groove going, but a lot of the times it's just kind of just strolling through the typical Godzilla formula and not really changing anything, not shaking anything up. It's treading on very safe ground here, and I think that's for a lot of people that's going to be a big plus, and for a lot of people that's going to be a big minus. And I'm kind of in the middle there. I'm like, okay, this is a good Godzilla film, but it's nowhere near great. And I don't know. I just wish it would just break free of these chains and just try something a little bit different, because obviously they're setting this up for a sequel. We're going to get more Godzilla films in the future. I think from both Toho and the ones we got going on in America here from Legendary. But I hope they have, the strength to break free and create human stories that are not incredibly interesting, just a little bit more different, just outside the the usual box that we've seen with a lot of these Godzilla films. So hopefully in the future we'll get more films that can also, yes, feature more giant monsters, of course, but also feel different. Because Shin Godzilla, go back and watch Shin Godzilla from 2016. It feels different. Like, it has a much different energy to it that's more unique, that separates itself from the other Godzilla films. Whereas Godzilla, the new Godzilla, King of the Monsters, just kind of falls in line with, the rest of the films. You can just, perfectly place it inside the rest of the average Godzilla films. So, for Godzilla, King of the Monsters, 3 out of 5 stars.